The winter wind howled through the broken shutters of the small shack, carrying with it the bitter scent of smoke from distant chimneys. Other homes where families sat around full fires, where children were warm and fed. Inside, in the dimness, a young mother knelt on the cracked wooden floor, wrapping her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders. The shawl had once been her wedding cloth, bright and soft. Now it was frayed, faded, and full of holes. Still, she kept it because it was the only thing left that felt like hers. Her son, barely 6, slept fitfully on a straw mat in the corner, coughing now and then in his sleep. His cheeks were pale, his hair tangled and thin. She brushed his forehead with trembling fingers and felt the heat there. It was not the first fever he had endured, but it was stronger this time. In the past, she would have run to the village healer, but he had left months ago after a band of raiders passed through and looted the hamlet. The small store of herbs she had collected was gone. Even the neighbors who might have helped were gone or hiding in their own misery. Her name was Lyra. Once she had laughed easily, known the smell of baking bread and the weight of a coin purse in her apron pocket. She had been a farmer's daughter and a merchant's wife, and for a few short years life had seemed like a promise rather than a burden. But the war, whose banners she had never seen, whose causes she did not understand, had rolled across the land like a fire across dry grass. Soldiers burned the fields and took what they pleased. Her husband had been conscripted and never returned. Lyra and her son had survived on scraps and kindness, and now even kindness had dried up. Every morning she rose before dawn and walked to the river to fill their cracked pot. She bartered the last of her belongings, a copper ring, a wooden comb, a half-worn pair of boots for crusts of bread. Her hands were raw from hauling, from scrubbing, from clawing at frozen soil in hopes of finding roots to boil. She told herself she would endure anything as long as her boy was safe. But now his thin body, curled under a threadbare blanket, was proof that her endurance was not enough. Outside, voices drifted through the cold air, other villagers muttering about leaving, about a healer rumored to live far in the northern hills, about a price too high to pay. Lyra listened but said nothing. She had no money for a journey, no horse, no friend to leave her son with. She knelt there, staring at the flickering shadow of the dying candle, her heart pounding with the helplessness of it. A mother was supposed to protect her child. What was she if she could not? As the night deepened, Lyra rocked back on her heels and stared at the ceiling beams. Her lips moved silently. A prayer she no longer believed would be heard. She prayed anyway. To the old gods of the river, to the nameless spirits of the hills, to anyone who might listen. "Don't take him," she whispered. "Take me, but not him." The words rose like mist and faded, leaving her in the silence of the shack. The door rattled in a sudden gust. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw a shape beyond it, a flicker of something not entirely human. Perhaps she was imagining things. Hunger and fear could conjure strange visions. She blinked and it was gone. But the whisper of hope it left behind would not fade. Maybe there really was someone or something out there who could help, someone powerful enough to tip the scales of life and death. And if that being demanded a price, what price would she not pay? With her son's shallow breaths filling the darkness, Lyra wrapped the ragged shawl tighter around herself. She had reached the edge of what she could bear. Beyond it lay choices she had never thought she would face. She would not sleep that night. She would plan and she would go because her boy's life was worth more than her own. By dawn, the little shack felt even colder. Frost laced the inside of the window panes like spiderwebs, and the single candle had long since burned out. Lyra's son, Aaron, stirred on his straw mat, letting out a rasping cough that tore through the quiet. Lyra knelt beside him instantly, pressing a palm to his forehead. The heat there startled her, burning hot now, far worse than the night before. His lips were dry and cracked. When he tried to speak, only a hoarse whimper escaped. "Shh," she murmured, spooning the last of their weak broth to his lips. He swallowed once, then turned his head away, unable to keep it down. A wave of panic struck her chest. He had to eat, had to drink, but his body was rejecting even water. She wrapped him tighter in the blanket, rocking him gently as if that could push the fever back. Outside, a dog barked and a cart rumbled down the frozen lane. Lyra heard snippets of conversation from the neighbors, fearful whispers about an outbreak in the southern quarter, about a winter sickness that took the children first. Her stomach turned to stone. She had hoped Aaron's fever was just another seasonal chill. Now she wasn't sure. She stumbled to her shelf, pulling down an old jar of dried herbs. Only crumbs remained. She crushed them in her palm anyway, sprinkling them into a cup of hot water she had boiled at dawn. But when she offered it to Aaron, he turned his face away again. His eyelids fluttered as though even holding them open took too much effort. Lyra's own body trembled with exhaustion. She had spent the night awake, praying, imagining plans she couldn't afford to make. But seeing her son like this made those vague thoughts harden into decision. There was no more time to wait for neighbors' advice or for a miracle. If there was even a chance the rumors were true, that a healer lived beyond the hills or a spirit offered bargains to the desperate, she had to try. She crouched beside Aaron and stroked his sweat-damp hair. "Mama will be back soon," she whispered, though she knew she couldn't leave him alone. She would have to carry him somehow. He was light from months of hunger, but still heavy in her arms. She thought of the road beyond the village, snowdrifts, wild dogs, maybe bandits. But none of it mattered more than the fever burning the boy she loved. That afternoon, a new sound joined the coughs, a low, rattling wheeze in his chest. He gripped her hand weakly, eyes half-focused, and whispered, "Mama." The single word came out cracked and small like a bird falling from its nest. "I'm here," she said quickly. "I'm not going anywhere." Inside, she felt herself breaking. By evening, she wrapped him in every scrap of cloth she owned. She slung their last jug of water over her shoulder and tucked the boy against her chest. She stepped outside into the brittle air, squinting at the distant hills. Smoke curled from the ruined watchtower on the ridge, the landmark people had mentioned when they spoke of the healer beyond the hills. A neighbor, old Kana, saw her at the edge of the lane and called out, "You can't go that way. It's a day's walk at least. You'll freeze." Lyra hesitated only a moment, then adjusted her grip on Aaron. "He'll die if I stay," she said simply. Kana had no answer. Snow crunched under her boots as she took the first steps north. Each one felt like a step off a cliff, but she didn't stop. The boy's fevered breath warmed her collarbone. Behind her, the village shrank into silence. Ahead, the hills loomed taller with every pace. She thought she heard a whisper on the wind, faint as a sigh, an echo of the prayer she had murmured the night before. "Take me, but not him." She tightened her arms around her son and kept walking. The path beyond the village wound upward like a pale ribbon, half buried under snow. Each step sank with a soft crunch, and each breath left a cloud that drifted behind her. Lyra adjusted the shawl around her son, keeping his head tucked beneath it so the wind wouldn't bite at his fevered skin. He was so still now that she sometimes had to press her ear to his lips to feel the faint whisper of his breath. Every time she did, her heart clenched. By mid-morning, she had reached the edge of the forest where the hills began to rise in earnest. Pines stretched upward like black spears, their branches heavy with snow. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called once, twice, then fell silent. Lyra paused to catch her breath, her legs trembling from the weight of her boy and the jug of water. She hadn't eaten since the night before. She thought about turning back for a heartbeat, but only for a heartbeat. The thought of returning to the shack and waiting for Aaron's fever to finish its work was worse than anything the road could hold. She shifted him higher against her chest and trudged on. As the trail climbed, she remembered the snatches of conversation she'd overheard. Travelers had spoken of a woman, some said a healer, some said a witch, who lived far past the ruined watchtower. Others spoke of a gray spirit who would answer a mother's plea. No one seemed sure which story was true or whether both were the same. But all had agreed on one thing. If you reached the stone arch at the highest ridge and called, something would come. Something would bargain. Lyra had never been a superstitious woman. As a girl, she'd laughed at tales of spirits and curses. But now, trudging through snow with her dying son pressed to her heart, she found herself whispering under her breath, "Please, please." It didn't matter who she was speaking to. She just needed someone to listen. Near noon, she came upon the watchtower at last. It rose out of the hillside like a rotten tooth, stones cracked and blackened by fire, char marks licked upward where soldiers had torched it years ago. She stopped there, leaning against a rock to rest and give Aaron a sip of water. He swallowed weakly, then dozed again, his small face flushed with fever. She brushed the snow from his eyelashes and kissed his temple. "We're close," she whispered, though she had no way of knowing. When she turned back to the path, she noticed footprints in the snow ahead of her, too large to be hers, too fresh to be old. Someone else had passed this way within the hour. She followed them automatically, comforted by the thought she wasn't alone out here. The footprints led her deeper into the pines until the trees thinned, revealing a clearing where the snow lay untouched except for a single ring of stones. A marker, perhaps, or an altar. At the center of the ring, a faint shimmer rose from the snow, like heat from a summer road. It vanished when she blinked, then flickered back into sight as though the air itself was breathing. She stepped closer, clutching Aaron to her. "Hello?" she called. Her voice came out cracked and small. "Is anyone here?" No one answered. But she felt it, the shift in the air, the quiet tension of a place where the world was thinner. She remembered the old stories of the gray spirit, a being who traded in life for life, a keeper of hidden paths. The thought made her throat tighten, but she didn't step back. This was why she had come. She knelt in the snow, setting Aaron gently on the blanket she spread out for him. His cheeks were flushed red, his breathing shallow. "Stay with me, baby," she murmured. "I'm going to fix this." Then she straightened and looked toward the shimmering air. "I'll give whatever I have," she whispered. "Just save him." The words trembled but did not break. For a long moment there was only silence. Then a breeze moved through the clearing, though the trees were still. It brushed against her face like a hand. She closed her eyes, heart hammering. The stories might be true after all. She had reached the place where hope began, or where it ended. The shimmer in the clearing faded like breath on glass, leaving only still air and snow. Lyra stood there for a long moment, clutching Aaron, trying to steady her own shaking. Nothing had spoken back, yet she could not shake the sense that something had noticed her. It felt like standing at the edge of a great dark lake, silent but aware. She wrapped Aaron tightly again and moved on. Beyond the stone ring, the path climbed even higher, narrow and crooked, lined with crooked birch trees. The snow grew deeper, clinging to her skirts and boots, and every step became a small battle. Her breath came in clouds that hung before her eyes. She no longer felt her fingers. Aaron moaned faintly in her arms. She kissed the crown of his head and whispered stories as she walked, fragments of lullabies from when he was small, memories of summer fields and fresh bread. She spoke not to comfort him, but to keep herself from falling apart. Each word kept her moving. By afternoon, her stomach clenched with hunger. She had packed no food, only the jug of water. The temptation to stop, to set the boy down and rest for just a moment, pressed at her like a heavy hand. Every drift of snow looked like a soft pillow. But she knew what would happen if she stopped. She would sleep and neither of them would wake. Another temptation crept in with the cold. Doubt. What if the healer was only a story? What if the gray spirit was only a tale told by desperate villagers to make misery seem less cruel? She imagined turning back to the village, begging for medicine from people who had none to give. She imagined cradling Aaron as the fever took him. The images were so vivid they made her stumble. "Not yet," she whispered. "Not yet." She forced her feet forward. As twilight began to fall, she saw a flicker of light between the trees. A cottage, stone walls, a sagging roof, smoke curling from a chimney. Her heart leapt painfully. She hurried to the door and knocked with her numb knuckles. An old man opened it, lantern in hand. His eyes darted to the bundle in her arms, then back to her face. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low and rough. "Night's coming. The hills aren't safe at night." "Please," she said. "My son is sick. They said there's a healer beyond the ridge." "Can you tell me where?" The man's gaze softened, but he shook his head. "There's no healer. Only the keeper." "You don't want to meet it." Lyra's throat tightened. "If it can save him, I'll meet it." The old man studied her for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Come in for a moment, warm yourselves," he muttered. "But you won't like the path you're on." Inside the cottage smelled of wood smoke and herbs. He gave her a mug of weak tea and a heel of bread. As she ate, he told her the old stories. The keeper demanded a price. Sometimes a life for a life. Sometimes something worse. Many had gone. Few returned. She listened, staring at her son's fevered face. Fear swelled inside her, but could not outweigh the fierce love in her chest. "If it's my life it wants," she said quietly, "it can have it." The old man's hands trembled as he set down his mug. "Once you speak that aloud, it will hear you," he whispered. "You still have a chance to turn back." Lyra met his eyes. "I don't." She rose, hefting Aaron against her. "Thank you for the fire." Night had fallen fully when she stepped outside again. The moon rose like a white coin over the ridge, lighting the path ahead. The temptation to stay in the warm cottage clung to her like a weight. But she turned her back on it and began climbing. Every step was a decision. Every step said, "Take me as long as you save my son." The moon was high and pale by the time Lyra reached the ridge. Her legs no longer felt like legs, only hollow sticks carrying her forward. Each breath burned her chest. Aaron lay limp in her arms, his skin clammy with sweat despite the freezing wind. She pressed her lips to his forehead and tasted salt and fever. At the top of the ridge, the trees fell away. The world opened into a bare plateau of rock and snow. In the center stood a stone arch, taller than a house, built of slabs blacker than night. It looked older than the hills themselves, its edges worn but sharp, etched with symbols that glimmered faintly as if lit from within. She had never seen it before, yet she recognized it from the fragments of stories, the gate where bargains were made. Her heart pounded. She set Aaron down on a patch of snow, wrapped him in her shawl, and knelt beside him. His eyes fluttered half open, unfocused. "Stay with me, my darling," she whispered. "I'm right here. I'll fix this." She brushed his hair back, then rose on shaking legs. The wind died. Snowflakes hung in the air as though time itself had slowed. Lyra stepped toward the arch.
"Hello?"
she called. Her voice echoed strangely. "Is anyone here?" No answer. Then a sound, faint and low, like water running under ice. The air thickened. The shadows at the base of the arch stretched upward, twisting until they took shape. A tall figure, gray and indistinct, as if carved from mist. Its face was hidden by a hood of darkness. It did not walk, but glided forward until it stood before her, taller than any human, silent as a tomb. Lyra's knees nearly gave way. She forced herself to stand. "Please," she said, voice hoarse. "They said you can help. My son is dying." The figure tilted its head. A voice emerged from the darkness, neither male nor female, echoing from everywhere at once. "I can. Then do it." She clutched her hands together. "Please save him." It moved closer, and she felt the cold of it like knives against her skin. "All life has weight," it murmured. "To give, one must take. What will you offer?" Lyra's heart thudded. "Anything," she whispered. "I have nothing left, no money, no land, but take whatever you want." "Not objects," the voice said. "They are ash to me. I take only what is precious." She looked back at Aaron, small and still in the snow. Her throat closed. "Take me," she said. "Take my life, my soul, whatever it costs. Just save my son." The figure regarded her in silence. "You speak easily," it said at last. "Do you understand? He will live and you will be bound. You will not see him grow. You will not walk the earth again as you are now." Tears blurred her eyes. "I understand." "Say it," the keeper whispered. Her whole body trembled. She swallowed hard and raised her chin. "Take me," she said, voice breaking but clear. "As long as you save my son." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the arch blazed with light, casting long black shadows across the plateau. The figure raised one gray hand. Lyra felt a pull in her chest as though her heart were being unstitched. She gasped but did not step back. Snow swirled upward, circling her and the figure. The wind roared. Symbols on the arch burned brighter, and Aaron cried out once in his fever. She saw color return to his cheeks, his breath deepen. Relief washed through her even as the pull in her chest grew stronger, a tide dragging her outward. The keeper's voice rose above the storm. "Done." Lyra's last sight of her son was his eyes opening, clear and brown again, searching for her. She tried to smile as darkness closed around her. The light from the arch dimmed as quickly as it had flared, shrinking back into the carvings until they glimmered only faintly once more. Snow settled again over the plateau. The wind began to move. For a moment the world seemed exactly as it had been. Only Lyra was gone. Aaron blinked in confusion. He was lying on the blanket where his mother had placed him, but the fever had broken. His chest rose and fell easily. The pain in his body had vanished like a bad dream. He sat up slowly, clutching the shawl around his shoulders. "Mama," he whispered. His voice was clear now, no longer cracked. "Mama?" Only the stone arch answered, humming faintly like a plucked string. The gray figure was gone. Where his mother had stood there was nothing but her footprint in the snow, and a single thread of the shawl caught on a jagged stone. Aaron's heart began to hammer. He crawled to the arch and pressed his hand to the cold black stone. "Mama!" His shout echoed back at him from the surrounding hills. No one answered. He called again and again until his voice cracked with sobs. The arch remained silent. Below, the old man in the cottage paused at his window, listening to the faint cry carried on the wind. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer for the boy. He had heard that cry before. Far away, though far was the wrong word for a place beyond distance, Lyra opened her eyes. She stood in a vast cavern of pale gray light. It wasn't cold or warm. It wasn't even air she breathed, but something weightless and endless. Around her moved shapes, shadows of people, some weeping, some silent, some staring with empty eyes. They drifted like leaves on a slow river. None had substance. She looked down at herself and saw that she too was dimming at the edges, her fingers translucent. Only her heart still burned with color. The keeper appeared beside her, taller here, its hood of darkness unfurling into wings like tattered night. "You are bound," it said, voice echoing without sound. "Your son lives." Lyra's throat tightened. "Where is he?" she asked. "Can I see him? Speak to him?" The keeper tilted its head. "Not as you are. You gave yourself. The living and the bound do not meet," she wanted to scream, but no breath came. She had known this would happen. But knowing had not prepared her for the emptiness. "Is he safe?" she whispered. "Yes, he is safe. He will be healthy now. He will have a chance." Lyra wrapped her arms around herself. The cavern felt endless. The shadows moved on and on. "What happens to me?" she asked. "You will serve," the keeper said. "Your will is still yours, but your days are mine. You will carry messages between worlds, guide the lost, gather the stray souls. This is the weight you chose." A flicker of defiance rose in her chest. "If that's the price, I'll pay it. But don't let him forget me, please." The keeper's voice softened slightly. "He will remember. Love leaves a mark deeper than any bargain." She closed her eyes and pressed a trembling hand over her heart. Somewhere far above on a snow-covered ridge, a boy sat alone, clutching a thread of his mother's shawl. His fever had broken, but the cold of the mountain bit into his skin. He whispered her name again and again until the sky turned from black to gray with dawn. On the plateau, the stone arch glowed once more, just faintly. A breeze curled around Aaron, warm despite the snow, brushing his cheek like a hand. He felt it and shivered. Somewhere deep inside, though he could not explain why, he knew she was gone, and that she had chosen this. He wrapped the shawl tighter and rose to his feet. The path down the ridge was long, but for the first time since he could remember, his body felt strong. He took one step, then another, leaving two sets of footprints in the snow, one small, one faint as mist, walking beside him. Years passed like the slow turning of the seasons. The war that had devoured the villages burned itself out. Soldiers stopped marching through the valleys, and green returned to the fields. Crops grew again, children played in the lanes, and the world began to heal in small, uneven ways. Aaron grew as well. He never again fell sick the way he had on the ridge. His body, once thin and fragile, filled out with strength. By the time he was 12, he could outclimb any boy in the village. By 16, he could outwork any man in the fields. People said he had his mother's quiet eyes and his father's broad hands. But when they said her name, they always lowered their voices, for no one truly knew what had happened to her. He remembered. He remembered waking on the plateau, feverless but alone, the arch rising over him like a black crown. He remembered calling until his voice broke. He remembered the faint breeze that had brushed his cheek, warm and sad, and how he had somehow known she was gone because of him. That knowledge lived in him like a second heartbeat. In dreams, he sometimes saw her standing on a gray shore reaching for him. He would try to run to her, but the ground between them would stretch like cloth until she faded. He always woke with tears on his face. The villagers treated him kindly but cautiously. He was the boy who had gone up the ridge fevered and come back alone, healthy, with eyes too old for his age. Old Kana, who had seen Lyra leave, sometimes pressed a hand to his shoulder and whispered, "She loved you more than anything." He would nod, but the words were no comfort. Love was the reason she had vanished. On his 17th birthday, he walked to the edge of the hills and looked up at the ridge. Snow still clung to the highest stones. The arch was a black slash against the sky. He had not gone near it since that day, but now as he stared, a sense of pulling filled his chest. The same pull he had felt as a child when the fever left him. Something was calling. That night he couldn't sleep. He sat by the dying fire in the little house he had rebuilt from the shack, staring at the thread of his mother's shawl he still kept in a wooden box. It had faded to almost white now, but when he touched it he swore he felt a faint pulse, as if some part of her was still there. He thought of the stories the old man had told, the warnings he'd ignored. He thought of his mother's last words. He had been too young to understand, but he understood now. She had traded her life for his. He closed the box and stood. The decision was as clear and heavy as a stone in his hand. He could not live under her sacrifice forever. If there was even a chance to reach her, to thank her, to free her, he had to take it. Before dawn he packed a satchel, bread, water, a knife, a cloak. He left a note for Kana, who had grown frail, promising to return. Then he set out along the same path his mother had taken years before. The hills were green in the lower valleys now, wildflowers poking through the thawing snow. But as he climbed higher, the world grew cold and stark again, as if time itself had stopped at the plateau. The closer he came to the ridge, the louder his heartbeat grew, echoing in his ears like distant drums. At the edge of the stone arch, he paused, staring up at its black pillars. The symbols carved into it glimmered faintly, just as they had in his memory. He felt no fever now, only resolve. He placed his palm on the stone. "I'm here," he whispered. "I'm coming for you, Mama." The wind stilled and the air thickened. Snowflakes hung in place as they had years ago. The arch hummed like a deep bell. Somewhere beyond the world, in a cavern of gray light, a woman paused in her endless task of guiding the lost and felt, for the first time in years, the brush of a familiar presence reaching back. Snow fell softly on the plateau, muffling sound as Aaron stood beneath the black arch. He could feel the same cold pulse of power that had taken his mother years ago, an invisible tide rolling under the stone. His breath came in clouds. He set down his satchel and stood straight, hands at his sides. "I've come to bargain," he said. His voice was steady. "You took my mother. You saved me. I've lived because of her. Now I've come for her." The symbols on the arch glimmered brighter as though stirred by his words. The air thickened and twisted. From the shadows at the base of the stone rose the keeper, its shape gliding upward until it loomed before him. It was taller than he remembered, its hood of darkness deeper, but its presence was the same. An immense weight, cold and endless. "You know who I am," the voice echoed. "I do." Aaron lifted his chin. "And I know what you do. You trade, you bind. I'm here to take her place." The keeper's hood tilted slightly. "Few come back willingly," it said. "You were a child." "You did not choose." "She did. I choose now," Aaron said. His heart pounded, but he did not look away. "Take me." "Let her go." Silence stretched like ice. Finally, the keeper's voice murmured, "You understand what you offer?" "Yes." "You would trade your life for hers as she traded hers for yours?" "Yes." His voice broke. "She didn't deserve this. She only wanted me to live. I can't live under that without trying." Something shifted in the air like the faintest sigh. The keeper moved closer. "Love binds," it said. "Two sacrifices, one for the other, are not the same as a bargain. They form a circle. Such circles are stronger than my chains." Aaron frowned, not understanding. "Then take me." "Break the circle." The keeper extended a gray hand. In its palm lay a faint ember of light pulsing softly. "This is what remains of her," it said. "Her choice, her will, her service. You cannot tear it away, but you can call to it." "How?" Aaron whispered. "Not with your death," the keeper said. "With your life. Speak her name, call her. Offer what is yours not as payment, but as a path. If she chooses, she may follow it back. If she does, you both will live with the weight of the bargain. If she does not, she remains." Aaron stared at the ember, his hands trembling. He had come ready to die, but this was different. He closed his eyes and pictured her face, her hands, her voice, her shawl. He took a deep breath. "Mama," he said softly. "Lyra, it's me, Aaron. Come back to me, please." Far away in the gray cavern, Lyra paused in her endless task. She felt a thread tug at her heart, warm and bright as though sunlight had pierced the ash-colored air. She closed her eyes. She could feel her son, older, stronger, but the same heartbeat she had carried on that long road. The keeper's voice murmured beside her in the cavern. "He calls. You may choose." Her hands trembled. She had made her peace with this place. She had told herself the price was worth it. But now, hearing his voice, she felt the same fierce love she had felt on the ridge. She realized the bargain had never truly ended. She reached for the thread. The gray light split, a seam opening. She stepped forward and felt a rush of cold, then heat, then air. On the plateau, Aaron gasped as a gust of wind swirled around the arch. Snow spun upward. In its center, a shape coalesced, a woman thin but whole, her hair streaming behind her, her shawl bright again as it had been years ago. "Aaron," she whispered. Her voice shook. "You're grown." He ran to her and she caught him as though he were still a boy. They held each other, trembling. The keeper's hood tilted. "The circle is closed," it murmured. "Go. Live." Its shape dissolved back into shadow, and the symbols on the arch dimmed until only bare stone remained. Mother and son stood together under the falling snow. For the first time since that winter night, Lyra felt the weight lift from her chest. She did not know what the future would bring. She only knew she had it now, and so did he. They turned and walked down the ridge together, leaving a single trail of footprints behind them.